Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to In the Merit of the Righteous Women, B'zchut Nashim Tzidkaniyot. Now, truth is that this is a topic that I'm not very comfortable speaking about because I'm a man. And if anyone, I would say that I think women would have more insight, that extra bina, right? The extra wisdom to extrapolate the ideas that the Torah gives to us when it talks about these women, right? Now it's interesting because there's shifts in the text in the Chumash itself. We're in the middle of Sefer Breshit right now, and we start off with the story in the beginning, and there's Adam and Eve. It's right away. It's not a story that rejects women, and you see throughout the whole of the Torah that women played a very central role on so much of the storytelling. There are some religions, some old stories that are ancient that don't describe women at all, but women played a very important role in everything that shapes the future of the Jewish people, that shapes the stories of the people. Often you'll see that women are left out, and it's not because they're left out, it's because they're the ones who understand strategically how to shape things from behind the scenes, you know? So what I want to do with you is, I want to spend time looking at these female personalities. I want to talk a little bit I want to understand who they were. Let's unpack their stories, their lives, what specific lessons do they teach, because each one is coming to teach a very specific lesson, just like in the Avot, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov have very specific midot, very specific character traits that they're teaching and that they're imparting to the Jewish world. So the question is like this: why do we need role models? Right? Truth is that you have them whether you like it or not. You can't escape from a role model. You either naturally look outward for it, to people in our lives, to the media, to culture, for images, to think about who we can become. We don't imagine without having a vision of something that pre-exists. Think about it. Why do we go to certain stores? Why are certain stores better at selling certain products than others? Well, it's because they put not just the jacket, they're creating the image, a style, a look. And now you're looking at all these different things and saying, oh, I like black, I like purple, I like white, I like green, I like the way this pairs and matches, this is more of an earth tones, this is more sharp tones, this is more flashy, this is less flashy, more conservative, less conservative, more revealing, less revealing. And we look outward, and as we look outward into the world around us, we will pick those blocks that we want to fit inside ourselves, and that's how we make choices about the things that we can become. So we look for images of who we might become. Now, think of someone who buys a wig. A wig. You buy a wig. Someone who wants to go buy a wig, and they find. You remember Princess Diana, right? From the royal family, Princess Diana, and she goes to the store and she buys herself a Princess Diana sheitel. Right? She puts on the sheitel. And now the question is, does she, in fact, become royal? No, right? But there's a hope of looking refined and royal. And it doesn't matter how many wigs or how many outfits she buys, no matter what she does, she will never ever be Princess Diana. She'll always remain the person that she is. And that's the point. Culture feeds us endless models of beauty, of strength, of success, of identity. And whether you like it or not, role models shape us. This is why it's so important when you have children to help cherry pick those role models, because those people that are in their lives will force a very specific and unique image of who your kids become. This is why it's so important to pick the right group of friends, the right community, the right synagogue, the right rabbi, all those things. My parents, unfortunately, did not understand that game. Right? They didn't live in a world where they understood the influence game, right? They lived in a world where things were very simple, and you went out and everything was learned from the home, but the world changed so fast that my parents certainly were not ready for it. And me as a child, I was unaware of how much my environment shaped me. And it was only when I became a teen and I started asking really difficult questions about who do I want to be versus who am I? Why am I who I am? And so much of who I was because of my friends, the community, the place that I grew up, but nothing really was an extension of me. It takes a long time to decide who you want to be. But there's no question that the role models around you, they definitely shape us. So the Torah understands this. Now, when the Torah tells us stories, it's never entertainment. It's a narrative, it's instruction. Okay, it's showing us, if you make this choice, here's who you become. And if you choose differently, you become someone else. And so, when we want to understand the real potential for a human being, especially the potential of a Jewish woman, you have to look at the righteous women of the Torah itself. These are not just stories of women. These are the people that helped shape the lives and give psychological female types of who young girls can become today. Right? So, but before we speak about Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Devorah, and Esther, we have to begin with the very first woman in the Torah. Now, this is a very tricky question, right? The first woman in the Torah is Chava, right? And the question behind all the questions, before we start speaking about all the questions, is, what is a woman? Right? It's unfortunately a question that people have forgotten how to answer today, right? I think every single female sport in the past 3 or 4 years have broken records. Crazy records have been broken in these female games, but not because biological women have broken those records, because men now identify as women and can now compete in female sports, and now they're breaking records. There's actually my favorite is I forget his name, is a Canadian weightlifter. He's a ginormous guy, he's 6'4", he has a beard, he looks like Hulk Hogan, big muscles, whatever it is, hairy chest, and he entered a female weightlifting competition, saying that he identified as a woman. Okay, and he was bench pressing like 650 something pounds, easily, like this guy, right? Like a gorilla of a man, right? Now the world record for women was something like 300 pounds. World record does not break by a 1x, a 2x. Doesn't work like that. There's men and women are built differently. So you have these ideas that a woman is not a man. A woman has her unique strengths, and certainly her greatest strength is not lifting huge amounts of weight over her head. But now the question is, okay, so how do we answer the question? So let's answer that. So in order for the Torah to bring us back to the creation of a human being, not male and not female as two separate beings, but as one integrated creature with two dimensions, right? Zachar unukeva bara otam, the pasuk says. He created male and female. Why doesn't it spend more time talking about the creation of just man or just a woman? Why is it that God had to create male and female at one shot, at once? One brushstroke, both of them were created at the same time. If I was creating a character of a story, I would first think of the male character, and then I think of the appropriate female character. But here, it's like, you're taking, water and oil, and you're mixing it together, at the same exact time, because this is the nature of masculine and feminine. So they're obviously two separate beings, but they're one integrated form. So the male aspect, okay, these are terms we're going to use a lot. There's the male aspect, which is the drive to initiate, to give, and to influence, and to create. And there is the female aspect, which is the drive to receive, build, nurture, and actualize. Now, having said that, both of these traits are not specific to male or female, because we're a combination of both. But when I use my female aspect, that female aspect expressed through the drive to build, nurture, internalize, actualize, and so on and so forth. So we're not talking about men versus women. There is no men versus women in the Torah. We're one. You have more, this is a women's class, just so you're listening. The people in the audience are more feminine than I am, which is why you're a female, and I'm more masculine, which is why I'm a male. Now, there are some women in here who are way more masculine than other women. To make them a man, it means that they have more of an influence, of a drive to give, influence, and create. We're not saying that all women are just takers. They're not all receivers. As a matter of fact, I would say most of the women in my life were the biggest givers of my life. Women, my mother, she definitely shaped, for better or for worse, she definitely shaped the way I see the world around me. And you had that same influence. Okay? Now, Chokhmah is insight, and Malchut is receiving and building, and develops. So Chokhmah gives, and Malchut develops. If the builder tries to build without receiving anything, the result is destruction. Did you hear that? If the builder tries to build without receiving anything, you can't have anything. It's just destruction. And if the giver gives without a recipient ready to cultivate, there's no world. So you need to have a symbiotic relation between these two different forces, male and female, giving to one and the other. This is why real human development requires something called hashpa'ah and kabbalah. Okay, what's hashpa'ah? Hashpa'ah is flow or influence, and kabbalah is receptivity, to receive. Now consider the following character. There's someone by the name of Methuselah. I don't know who he was. Who was Methuselah? Noah's grandfather. He lived the longest in the Torah, 969 years. Okay, old. Okay, his very name hints to death and the future. Right? He saw a world that was filled with corruption, and he withdrew from society. He was accurate, but he was wrong. Why? Because Judaism rejects the idea of turning your back to the world. We don't give up. You see a Mamdani coming up into power, and him choosing his little minions who are insane. Right? As Jews, we never walk away. We stop and we fight. We try to make the best that we can. So Judaism doesn't believe in creating hermits. Right? We don't disdain from society. Every single human being has a very specific value, a very specific task, because every single person is created in the image of God. Now, wisdom, the giving force, needs a place to land. Actualization, the building force, needs something true to build with. One without the other is incomplete. And that is why, the Torah begins with creation, with one single integrated human being. If total autonomy were ideal, God could have created a man and a woman separately from the beginning, but he didn't. He could have created a one being, by the way, that was an asexual being. It could reproduce itself. We have creatures like that today on the planet. Why do you need a zug? Why do we need a partner? Why did Hashem create partners? Now, what's interesting is that first human being was one. Zachar nekeva bara oto. He created it, or him, both male and female. The first act of creation is this, according to the Zohar, it says, du partzufim, he had two faces. One face in the front was male, the face in the back was female. Some say it was side by side, a two-headed monster, so to speak, right? But however you understand it, it was one being. And now the question is why? Why did God create it that way? Why did God create one being, male and female, and then separate it? And why not leave it the way He created it? God, like we've said before, is perfect, and everything He creates is perfect. Why would God create something that needs editing and changing? I thought He's perfect. Why is He doing that? So now, the materials that you use, they're not random. And therefore, God strings His DNA together with these two beings interwoven with one another, and then He unwinds it and separates it. And the reason why He does this is because there is a magnetic force between men and women. I'm not sure if you are familiar with this, right? But there's some people that you feel this word attracted to, right? So the word attraction, the laws of attraction are actually the laws of the magnetic force. One magnet is attracted to another. There's a pull. Now, do you see that pull? No. You don't see it, but you could feel it. There's something there. Someone drawing you, pulling you, and so on and so forth, right? So God creates both male and female for the essential purpose so that there can be this deep connection between the other. Almost a feeling of, hey, I remember this. I feel whole. I feel safe. I feel connected. I feel something that was missing that should be here, but it's not. And it's funny because if you're always plugged in, you don't even know it's there. L'dugma, for example, you ever have that experience of going to the movies or watching a movie and your hand falling asleep on your lap and not realizing that your hand was there, that it was on your lap? Like we're tactile beings. We feel, we touch, we sense things, right? But if you leave something in an area long enough, eventually you won't feel anything, right? So if I leave this finger in the palm of my hand long enough, what happens? I don't feel it. It's gone, right? In a relation between husband and wife, do you know that there's a power in passing something to a spouse? A meaningful experience that is there that most people don't know how to experience because they're always experiencing it. And so the Chachamim and the Torah in its infinite wisdom says there's times where you're not passing things. There's times where you have to put things on the table. There's times where you can't put things directly into your spouse's hands. There's times where you can't do that. And the reason why that's there is to help resensitize you to the moments when you can. You will never know that passing the salt shaker to your husband is meaningful until you're put into a position where you can't do it. And when you can't do it and you go back to being able to do it, that's when you know it's special. That's the way we're created, right? If I have coffee every single day and all I drink, eventually, coffee will make me sick, right? I often say I love steak. I love a good steak. There's nothing better than a good steak. I could have steak for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I could have steak for steak. That's how much I like steak. But if I had steak every single day, okay, for a week, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, okay, I don't care how much you like it, eventually the word steak will make you nauseous. Why is that? Why is it that we're created in a way where the things that we want and like, when we have too much of it, there's an aversion to it? God creates a world where man needs to create gaps, separation, for them to be able to appreciate, to be able to internalize the things around us. Now, the Torah says something different. The Torah calls it an ezer kenegdo. This is the pasuk. Let's just go back for a second. Vayomer Hashem, Vayomer Elokim, Naaseh Adam b'tzalmenu. God says to man, God says, Naaseh, we will make man b'tzalmenu, in our image, v'yirudu b'degat hayam, u'b'of hashamayim. He will go down and he will overcome and rule over the fish of the sea, the fowl, the birds of the heaven, u'b'heima, b'chol ha'aretz, b'chol ha'aramos, everything on the earth. V'yirach Elokim et Adam. He blesses them, b'tzalmo. B'tzel Elokim bara oto. He creates them both male and female. Oto, in the singular, not otam. The pasuk says oto, not otam. Why? Because, and that's why Rashi says over there, it's one being. Zachar u'nekeva bara otam. V'yivarech otam Elokim. V'yomer lahem Elokim peruvu. Melut ha'aretz v'kivshuha. I want you to go ahead and I want to create man and woman. So that you can go ahead and have many, many children. By the way, another reason why it says that God creates man, right, is because it's bad for him to be left alone. We'll see this a little bit later. It's lo tov liot adam levado. Not good for men to be left alone. Very bad. We are very destructive when we're alone. We're not very constructive when we're alone. So he says over here, the pasuk says, Mulu ta'aretz v'kivshuha. What does the word kivshuha mean? How would you translate that word? When you put the letter he at the end of a word, what does it make it? Thank you. The word kovesh means to conquer. You put the word kovesh, kivshuha, what does it mean? Conquer her. So who is he conquering? Is the pasuk saying that a man's job is to conquer his wife? Is that what it's saying? This is a very brainy class, Mechila. You're going to have to bear with me. Okay? What's that?
The previous phrase is ha'aretz.
So the simple reason is that's very good, is that it must be that he's telling him to conquer the earth. Right? But that's not what Rashi says. Rashi says, that's not how he learns it. He says, kivshuha. He says kivshuha shehazachor kovesh et nekeva. He says that the word kivshuha is not talking about man or this one being, male and female, conquering the earth. He's saying opposite. He's saying that the man's job, the kivshuha, is zachar kovesh et nekeva. The male has to conquer the female, right?
Like, we need to be the hunted. We cannot be the hunter of men when it comes to people, no?
Well, that's not true, actually, because, I mean, there are times where women have to be more assertive. Not ideal. But there are times where men need to be more assertive. But if there's a good guy out there who's too feminine and does not know how to be assertive, but he has everything good with him, doesn't mean that a woman can't ask the question, right? In a tzniut kind of way. So you have over here the pasuk says very clearly, God creates this thing, male and female. He tells the man to conquer her. Why is that?
Because he is the subject and the women should be the object.
So, when I first read this pasuk, I thought of like the Fred Flintstone. I don't know if you remember this old cartoon I grew up with, the Flintstones, and I think of like Fred and Wilma, and and I think of Fred taking out his, he takes out his big club and he bops her on the head and he drags her off to the cave, and that's how he conquers her. That is not what the word kivshuha means. Gentlemen, if you were watching this, understand that women do not like aggression. To be a man doesn't mean to be macho. It means to be firm. It means to have a clear vision of where you're going in the future, but it means something different. There's two ways of being kovesh someone. One way is I could force you. I take out my gun, my sword, you've got to do what I tell you to do, and now you have no choice. That is a form of kivusha. Okay, there's another way. King can force you to do his things by either sending out the army and forcing you to do it, or he can create laws, he can create a policy that you love. And I could win you over with words and not with force. That's also conquering someone. I conquered you through my talks. I conquered you through my ideas. I conquered you through the experiences we've shared together. That's also a form of conquering. And therefore, what the Torah is telling us, that in the order of things in the universe, the ideal paradigm is for the male aspect of us to lead the way. And therefore, the Zachor needs to conquer the Nekeva. And this is how you build the future. You conquer the world by having a process. Now, it's interesting because, we're today living in a time where I would say masculinity is lost. In 2025, men don't know how to be men anymore. And we're losing it even in the Sephardic communities also, right? They'll tell you, what do you mean? I got hair in my chest. It doesn't work like that, right? Even in the Sephardic community today, men don't know how to be men anymore. And I'll say more than that. I think women today forgot how to be women. We're losing it on both sides. And when you have a society where people don't understand their roles, I'm not saying, God forbid, that a woman can't be a doctor, a lawyer, or even a firewoman. I remember, I'm not sure if you remember this, there was in New York, I think there was the first firewoman, was 10 or 11 years ago, and I remember they interviewed her. And someone said, well, women are not as heavy as men. What happens if you walk into a building and there's a big guy in there? What are you going to do? How are you going to save him? How are you going to carry him? Women can't carry the same weight as men. So she said, I would drag him by the legs and pull him out. And when the second she said that, I'm very visual. I started thinking of a big fat guy, and she can't lift him, so she's dragging the guy down the stairs. he's like, I'm saving him, but I gave him a concussion along the way, And again, and I have no problem if she could have said, you know what, there are certain things I can't do. That's okay. I would have, and the right response there is I'm not going to drag him by the legs. I would call for backup and say, hey guys, I have a guy here I can't lift, and I need help to bring him out so I don't hurt him anymore. The first rule of public safety is don't do any more harm. You know what I'm saying? You're going to take the guy and drag him down the stairs, and you're going to give the guy a concussion. You're missing the plot over here. That's not the point of a firefighter. You're saving lives. So the Torah says that of course we understand there's different roles. And you see this, by the way. Who gave Moshe's children, Eliezer and Gershom, a Brit Milah? Tzipporah did. Oh, a woman could be a mohel? And certain times she can be. Shchita. There are times where a woman can do shchita. I'm saying we have Devorah, we have women who are judges, who are Nevi'im. It's not a limitation of. And the way I like to think of it is like this. The Torah, in its wisdom, understands that if I had to choose a caregiver between a male and a female, the best caregiver for children are going to be 100%, 99% of the time. I'm not going to, because I know some women that probably should not be caregivers, and their husbands would be a better caregiver. That's not the norm. The norm is most of the time, most women are going to be much better caregivers, 100% of the time. They're just better at it naturally. Most women, okay. So you have a woman who is a natural caregiver. Why would I force her to go out and work? Why would I force her and obligate her to stop 3 times in the middle of her day to do tefillah? Why would I force her to do limud? I would not force her to do those things. And this is the genius of the Torah. The genius of the Torah is that, no. A woman has, the most important thing she can do is build society, build humanity. And the way in which she can do that, and again, I'm not suggesting that a woman needs to be barefoot and pregnant and just pop out kids. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying she can't have her own. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I have to choose a male or versus a female to go ahead and vanquish the dragon in the forest. Most of the time, a male will be more suitable. I'm not saying a woman can't do it. Right? If you had a choice between going out and pulling a bear out of the garage, right? Are you going to say, no, tell her, I'll do it. You sit down on the couch. I'll take care of the bear. You take care of the garbage. I'll take care of the bear. Right? That's not going to happen. There's a bear in the garage. You're sending the husband into the garage. Okay? If you had to choose between one person to water the flowers and fighting the bear, I would say the women were probably better off and more suitable watering the flowers. I'm not saying a woman can't fight the bear. She can fight the bear. But if I had to pick and choose, I'd say most of the time, most men are more suitable for the bear. Most women are probably better with that. And so having said that, so I want to create and build a society, I need men and women. Right? One of the biggest issues right now globally around the world is that in Western societies, people are not having children. By the way, this happens historically. You look at South America. South America has ancient civilizations that are gone. In Peru, right? You have ancient megastructures, and we don't know what happened to them. You see this Greek, Rome, these massive amounts of cultures gone. What happens? I'll tell you what happens. It's the same loop over and over again. Whenever a society becomes super wealthy, super powerful, it becomes more liberal. And as they become more liberal, the women want equality. And I think, by the way, women were, from my perspective, are always equal, but they want freedom to, or freedom from, right? Where are they taking? What do they want with their freedom? Freedom to do what? They want freedom to be a man, and that's the problem. And so when women want to become more masculine because they think the guys are having more fun, well, let's talk about it. What happened in America since the women's liberation movement happened in the 60s, 50s and the 60s? Are women happier today? I don't know if they're happier today. I don't think they're happier today. I think women today are less happy. I know that they won't admit it to you. If anything, there's a great podcast with Eric Weinstein who pointed out this great hara'ah, this amazing insight about women today. He says because women today don't have children, so he says, think about it. He said, for millions of years, he's an evolutionist, women were given these powerful urges to protect their children, like a mother, fighting to save its cubs, right? They have this natural instinct to protect the kids, but they're not having children today. So what do? They go out and they use that same energy to protect ideas. Free Palestine, free this, free that, environment. They're using that same maternal instinct, that same aggression that a mother would use to save a child for bad ideas. And that's what you're seeing right now in the world. Women were definitely happier being mothers, no question about it. Carol Gilligan, who was one of the founders of the feminist movement in the 60s, okay? She never got married, had no children, and she wrote a book where she says how the whole thing, we've lost the plot. We messed up. We did not make it better for women. We lost. Women today are working the same like men. They get paid less. Okay, they have the same responsibilities of raising the family and the children. right? But the husbands are still doing the same thing they were doing before, and they don't have the same responsibilities. It's true we have all these machines, washing machines and sun dryers and all that stuff made a little bit better, but all it is, it's just more time in different areas. She has less time for herself. She has less time of feeling fulfilled in building something, of creating a family, of raising children with ideals and values. Instead, who's raising the children? The universities. And what are they producing? Blue-haired, purple-haired, crazy kids that are going out there and supporting the worst possible ideas, voting in a socialist communist in New York City. How does that happen? Because we've lost our women. We haven't protected the women. And so in America, everything is an extreme, one versus the other. Either a woman's going to have no rights, or she'll have all the rights, right? And this is a mistake. And I think the two things that were so dangerous for America and for women in the West was the women's lib movement and birth control. The top two drugs in universities in America today is number one is Ritalin, and number two is birth control, right? So what did that do? It used to be that there was a economics between a male and a female. I'm not going to get into a relationship with you, a woman would say, because I don't want the risk of having a child and not having a husband around to take care of that child. A woman's pregnant. It's harder for her to work, harder for her. She needs more assistance. She's going to have a baby. She's going to be out of commission for a few days. She needs support and so on and so forth, right? So the economics of it was that a male partner was there to help support her, to provide for her. If you think about it, he was the hunter. He'd go out and with his sword and he'd conquer the world. He'd go out and then do the heavy lifting, get the grain and bring the water and bring all this stuff. And she would take all these little things and receive it from him and turn it into bread, turn the wood cabinet into a home, create things from the materials that he would go ahead and bring her, okay? But in a world with birth control there, a woman now doesn't have that same fear anymore. She could do whatever she wants to do with as many people as she wants. But at the same time as she's doing that, you know what happens? She doesn't have the materials anymore to create a connection. And she doesn't feel connected to anything. And many years ago, a friend of mine who was a rabbi in South Africa was asked to be part of a panel in Johannesburg, where they invited a priest, an imam, and the rabbi to talk about AIDS, the AIDS epidemic. This is the early 2000s. And there was a horrible rumor that the way you cured AIDS in South Africa, amongst the tribes, was by having relations with a virgin. So men were kidnapping girls and raping them and giving them AIDS, thinking that they're curing AIDS. So it just spread more and more AIDS. Anyway, so the rabbi was asked to share a couple of words on the topic, and he had said he asked everyone to he handed out a piece of Scotch tape, and said to everyone in the crowd, like 2,000 students in the group, take the tape. I want you to stick it on the back of your palm, and I want you to take it off and put it to the next person. And as this is going on, he's reading the statistics, the age and whatever it is, right? So after about 100 kids, one kid raises the hand and says, Rabbi, do you have another piece of tape? It's not sticking anymore. So he says, give me the tape. And he used this tape that no longer has sticky power to talk about relations and relationships. He said, if you keep having these kinds of relationships, you won't have the sticky power to connect anymore, right? It's a powerful visualization of helping people understand it. Like there are some people that you are going to be connected to in a more deeper way than others. And it's not an easy thing because we don't live in a society. We live in a society where my female students will tell me, all my professors tell me that, I hate to use this word, but sex is like ice cream. Okay, this is a quote. This is a girl who went to University of Pennsylvania, okay, one of the top Ivy League schools in the country. This professor told her, sex is like ice cream, okay, and that you'll never know which flavors you like until you try all of them. Right? And so why did this story come up? The story came up is because she was dating a Kohen, and she can't date a Kohen anymore. She's not allowed to be with a Kohen because of her experiences in college, because she was trying all the flavors on campus, right? And now she has all this charata, this regret of why did this guy give me the worst possible advice? It destroyed her, this advice. Destroyed her, because it's not about that, it's not a flavor, right? It's the most personal part of our lives that it's been corrupted and twisted and perverted. And therefore the Torah talks about this idea that the ideal relationship is one person with one person. And it's not easy. I'm not saying there are no scenarios where people can't get divorced. I'm not saying there's no scenarios where people, where things don't work out. Of course that happens. But the ideal situation, if we could go ahead and paint the ideal, is to have two people that are opposite one another, who are ezer kenegdo, a helpmate that is pit against them, the counterweight. And in that space, if you understand the relationship and the purpose of that relationship, is that the opposition of the other is there to force you to grow. And I say this over and over again. Most relationships fail because it's only about your perspective. And you can only see things from your lens, and you've never spent any time trying to see it from the lens of your partner, the lens of your spouse. When you are able to actually start seeing things from the lens of your spouse, you will become a greater human being. You'll become a much broader person. Sometimes, obviously, spouses are wrong. We're not talking about that. But sometime before you fight and argue your point, super important to first try to take yourselves and put yourselves in the shoes of the other person. Understand their perspective first. In that space, if two people are always humble enough to quiet their own egos, and it's not about being right, it's about being understood. It's about creating a safe place where we can grow and develop together, right? In that space, we change the world. We can have any conversation. And if we don't have that space, we end up creating a world of destruction. What's that? Yes, and by the way, this is where we get it wrong. So God creates, the societies are so fascinating because America is a great example. This is the richest country in history of the world. I don't feel so rich, right? I'm not a billionaire, right? I don't have a driver. I don't have a fancy penthouse. I only have one house. I travel. I go on economy. I don't go first. I'm a simple person, right? But with the simplicity of all the things that I have, I am still wealthier than any king that has lived before me. Do you understand that? And we're complaining. It's not hot enough, it's not cold enough, it's not comfortable enough, my shoes are old, my jacket is this and that. It doesn't stop. But if we were to stop and appreciate where we are as Americans in this country, right? We are so blessed. We are living in the most amazing time in history. It is so special. And the sad thing is, because children grew up with all of this, the silver spoon in their mouth, they have no idea how bad it can be. They think there's something better than this. There is nothing better than this. There's nothing better than this right now on the planet. No matter, I don't care where you go, there's nothing better. There's no other place on the planet I would want to live. I want to live here. Obviously Israel, who's Mashiach and whatever it is, and then Israel as a country, spiritually speaking. But from a place of Gashmiut, this is it. It's the best. I go anywhere. I have a whole entire country. I have 50 states. I have the Caribbean. I have all these places I could go to. I could go to Hawaii if I want to. I have all these places. Amazing, right? But we're not here to just become takers, right? A woman who just takes, it's a problem. The nature of a woman is to naturally be a giver. Everything she does is giving. She's always in a state of giving. When people hear helper, they think someone who is a lesser, right? She is an ezer kenegdo. She's lesser. She's a helper. She's less of a person. But it's the opposite. A surgeon, right, only fulfills his particular mission is when he saves lives. He's a helper. A psychologist only fulfills himself when his clients grow and they're able to uncover and unravel their psychological issues. The fulfillment comes from enabling, from building and developing others. Do you understand that? A helper is not a bad thing. A teacher is a helper. So when we say ezer kenegdo, it's not a lower status. If anything, the people that help the most in society are the most amazing people in society. So we're the problem. We have the issue of ezer. Do I really want to be an ezer? You think of ezer, you think like a maid. You think of like but there's something to be said about being the person that is helping. And therefore, when a woman is called an ezer kenegdo, that is where most women will find their deepest forms of fulfillment. A woman will find her fulfillment not from being the taker, but from being the supporter, right? Not through self-isolated achievements, but through building worlds, building homes, building children, building communities, building spirituality, building identity. And that's why the Torah commands men, perurvu. The mitzvah is for the man to prove, not for a woman. Because the inner desire to build life rests far more deeply within a woman than it is with a man. Most men don't want to have children. And if they have one child, they're like, okay, we're good. Right? Most of the time, most women are the ones that have this deep desire to want to have children. It's interesting. It's interesting because if you think about it from a biological place, a woman can't have children forever. Right? She has a time, a window from when she has her period. She could have a child, and then at some point it stops. But a man, it doesn't. It just keeps going for the rest of his life. Right? He could have a child when he's 90 years old. He could have a child when he's 500. It doesn't matter. He could always have it. As a matter of fact, actually, it's interesting. In America, the place where AIDS is spreading the most is with senior citizens. In Florida. They're not using protection. You can't get pregnant anyway. What's the big deal? Da, da, da. You have these old men who are like, whatever it is. It's just like, ooh. Therefore, the mitzvah is for a man. Now, the mitzvah for a man, puravu, is not just to have a one-night stand. The mitzvah for a man is to take the potential that is buried deep within himself, take that material, and give it to someone who he trusts the most with, to receive it and turn that energy into life. That's what that is. It's not just a hurdle. There is an aspect of mitzvat onah, the mitzvah of having fun, and there's a separate mitzvah of mitzvat puravu. A man and a woman both have the mitzvah of onah, of having pleasure, but only a man has a mitzvah puravu. Women do not have a mitzvah to have children, because she naturally has a desire. She feels that pull of like, I want to have a kid. Most women at least do. I don't know all women. I can't say all, but most women I've spoken to, like, I want a baby, right? And you see that in the Parshiyot with the Imahot saying to Yaakov, give me a baby, I want a baby, and so on and so forth, right? That is the nature of a woman. But to think about man, right? He is not interested in that. A man has to go through searching. He has to first recognize that something is missing. And therefore, when Adam names the creatures, what does he call them? Right? It says there was no helpmate for Adam. Pasuk specifically says, it says, Lo tov li'at Adam avado. It's not good for man to be left alone. Right? Let me just find the pasuk for you. Lo tov li'at Adam avado. Right? Aselo ezer kenegdo. Where's the pasuk here? It's not here. Pasuk says that God sees that it's not good for man to be alone. What happens next is that Hashem says to Adam, I want you to go out and I want you to look at all of the creatures on the planet, and I want you to give them names. So it's cruel. First pasuk says, hey, Adam, it's not good for you to be left alone. Let's make him a helpmate. Next pasuk, go give names to all the animals. Why would you do that? What? Oh. Why would you do that? Meaning, like, shouldn't God fix the problem right away? You see the guys alone, and then you say, go name all the animals. And what happens? Adam goes out and he sees that all the animals have partners, and he doesn't have a partner. So, what's the pasuk? It's
Pasuk is for haircut.
Yeah. What does it say?
And the human gave names to all the cattle.
What's the pasuk before that? 18.
Hashem for 18. Okay.
God says it's not good for man to be alone.
Hashem said it is not good for the human to be alone.
Okay.
that will make a fitting counterpart.
Okay, 19.
And Hashem formed out of the earth all the wild beasts
Uh-huh.
and all the birds of the sky.
Right.
And brought them to the human
Right.
to see what he would call them.
Right.
And whatever the human called each living creature, that would be its name.
Right. And then next verse.
And the human gave names.
And they gave names. This is a weird. It's just a weird thing. If man's alone, give. By the way, I gave all these creatures. Adam, you're alone. Give them names. And he sees that they all have pairs, and he's alone. It's like a weird thing.
So who said this here? He did not find.
He did not. Below matzah ezer kenegdo. He did not find a helpmate for himself. From the animals. There's actually, Midrash says that he tried figuring out how to make it work with the animals, but it didn't work. Right? But he realized he was alone and unique. And therefore, for a man, in his psychology, he has to recognize that there is something that is missing from within him. If a man spends every single moment of his life playing video games, watching movies, and there's no time for him to process his own emotions, the inner wants, the inner needs, he'll be destroyed. In Japan today, most men over the age of 35, okay, I think something like 40% of men over the age of 45 are not in a serious relationship and have no interest in being in a serious relationship. They all have robots. They have robots and artificial intelligence, and that's where they're finding companionship.
Where is this?
Japan.
Somebody got married to a robot.
Yeah, they're getting married today, but they're trying to, whatever it is. Like, it's just like, but the point is that, the world that God creates is a world for us to go ahead and to develop and to turn something into more, right? So that doesn't. So when we say, but for Adam there was no helper, right? That doesn't mean that he was looking for a mate among the animals. It means that Adam understood the nature of creation, the purpose, its limits. So he could recognize none of this is me, none of this completes me. I need something to complete me. Only after Adam named everyone and he realized that how incomplete he was and desired a partner, that's when God created a Chava for him. From that space of desperation, from that place of need, that's where she comes from. And so this is where the story of Nashim Tzidkoniot begins. You have to think of it in these terms. We're going to read about women, and I wanted to start this way because, why is Abraham the guy leading in the story? And you'll see, God willing, next Wednesday, not Thursday, okay, we are going to talk about Sarah and who she was, and we're going to go through her midot and so on and so forth. So I felt like this is an important introduction for us. Let's just put things in perspective. Male and female, how does it work? This is more of a class about gender roles in Judaism, but I think it's an important kind of like set of framework for us to kind of like develop the themes of who the Imahot were. And I'll show you going back. It's interesting actually. I'm just going to end with this, and I need to do my parsha. Is that when we look at the story of Bereshit, what day was man created on? Day 6. What day was the sun and the moon created on? Day 4. What happened to the sun and the moon? They argued, and what ended up happening? The sun won, the moon lost. The sun and the moon is a foreshadowing of the male-female dynamic, of the male being the sun and the female being the moon. Think about it. The moon has no light of its own, right? The sun is the giver, the moon is the receiver. That's the masculine, feminine element fighting over there. There were 2 stars, Shtei Marot Gdolot, 2 great luminaries, and one later becomes small. And Midrash fills in the backstory saying they were arguing. God said, you're right, there can't be 2 kings. Since you complained, goodbye. We're going to shrink you, right? So there's a foreshadowing of this idea already in nature, that there's this concept of male, female, and so on and so forth. And I would argue that so much of what is broken in our society today is because there is no masculinity. I'm not saying men, I'm saying masculinity, power, of that clear focus, a definitive understanding of what we are here to do and to accomplish, that is lost with females losing their full understanding what their role is. We just have a world of chaos. But Hashem, we'll pick up next week with Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today.